Hi, this is Kip Carr, and I thought I would do a little video in lieu of, that episode out in San Francisco with Kamala Harris at the Move On forum, and it awakens this whole conversation about presidential candidates and Secret Service protection. So I thought I would highlight a couple of things that a lot of people may not be aware of, and that is the fact that that Congress changed the law that authorized Secret Service protection to the major party nominees, and that was done after the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy in 1968. In May 2007, which was about 12 years ago, Barack Obama, then the Illinois senator, received Secret Service protection, and that was done by the authorization of the Homeland Security Secretary. I believe that was the earliest request made by a presidential candidate to receive Secret Service protection that early in the election cycle. I do recall that Jesse Jackson requested and received Secret Service protection, and at that time, President Reagan authorized Reverend Jackson to have protection both in 1984 as well as his run in 1988. However, the Congressional Research Service has indicated that there are several factors that go into play in terms of who qualifies for Secret Service protection. And these are some things that I thought I would go ahead and highlight. One is that they must be publicly declared candidates. The second is that they are actively campaigning nationally and are competing in at least 10 state primaries. So it's not enough for you to announce. You need to have at least been on the ballot in a minimum of 10 state primaries for 2020. They are pursuing the nomination of a qualified party, one whose presidential candidate received at least 10% of the popular vote in the prior election. So in other words, they need to at least be of the top two political parties, either Republican or Democrat, or I think that a Libertarian could certainly qualify. A Libertarian candidate got at least 10% in the last cycle. They're qualified for public matching funds of at least $100,000 and have raised at least $10 million in additional contribution. Now that's where the rubber meets the road when it comes to a lot of these candidates that are running right now. I mean, you've got, 24 Democratic candidates that are running. How many of them have $10 million that they've raised in additional contribution? So that's one of the criteria that they're looking at, as well as that they've qualified for about $100,000 in public matching funds. The other thing, and this is probably the most important that you may hear within the media, is by April 1st of the election year, that candidate received 5% of individual candidate preferences in most recent national opinion polls by the four networks ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, or have received at least 10% of the votes cast for all candidates in 2 same-day or consecutive primaries or caucuses. So they either have to have a 5% standing in the polls, or they at least had to have 10% of the votes in caucuses or primaries. Now, being that there's no caucuses until early 2020, once they hit those markers, that's not a given. The Secretary of Homeland Security, which I believe is Acting Secretary Kevin McAllen, who took over for Kirstjen Nielsen. Well, he consults with an advisory committee and one additional member. And the advisory committee consists of the congressional leadership, and then I think they appoint an additional person on this committee. The committee will help determine if the presidential candidate is eligible for Secret Service protection. If the candidate is eligible, they then are notified of the advisory committee's decision, and they will be asked if they would like protection. So that's a couple of things to look at. I'm quite sure that you may have candidates that may ask for protection, but it's more than just asking for it. It's a process where an advisory committee evaluates the request and makes a recommendation. Also, I believe in 2016, Bernie Sanders did request and receive Secret Service protection and because he had met all of those marks. He had the public funding component, the standing in the polls component, as well as the actual votes in primaries and caucuses. So that's why when the race was down to him and Hillary Clinton, he had Secret Service protection in the primary. Now the question is, because of the incident in San Francisco, will the rules be tweaked that would allow for a Democratic or even a Republican candidate to request protection when they don't meet any of these markers? So let me know in the comments what you think. And I just thought I would record this video because a lot of people is not clear on how Secret Service protection with presidential candidates work, and why is it that she doesn't even have protection right now. So the main takeaway is that it's more than you just declaring for president, organizing with the FEC. There's a clear process that you have to undergo in order to even be considered to receive protection. So I thought I would throw that out there, and that's about it. All right, take care.